Zara! Oh my God! She rushed to her daughter, shaking with panic. Zara whimpered softly, her small face pale. Sochi lifted her in her arms, her tears falling onto Zara's cheek. No, no, no! Please stay with me. In the bustling city of Lagos, there lived a hardworking woman named Sochi. She was an accountant, dedicated to her job and tireless in her efforts to support her family. Sochi was married to a man named UCHE, a businessman, and together they were blessed with a beautiful 3-year-old daughter named Zara. Financially, Sochi's family was suitable, but behind the scenes, her life was filled with pain and hidden struggles. Despite his success, UCHE was a chronic humanizer. He treated Sochi poorly, showing her no little respect or kindness. He would often justify his behavior, leaving Sochi feeling hurt and isolated. One night, as Sochi waited anxiously at home, UCHE finally stumbled in late, reeking of alcohol. Zara was still awake, playing with her toys in the corner of the living room, her innocent laughter filling the room. Sochi took a deep breath, determined to confront her husband. UCHE, she began cautiously. Why do you always come home so late? You are a married man. Can't you see how this is hurting our family? UCHE narrowed his eyes at her, his expression quickly darkening. Who are you to ask me, Sochi? He snapped. I come home when I want. You should be grateful I come home at all. But UCHE, I'm just asking for our daughter's sake. Sochi pleaded, glancing at Zara. She deserves a father who is there for her. Her words only seemed to fuel his anger. Without warning, UCHE's hand shot out, striking Sochi across the face. She stumbled back, clutching her cheek in shock. Mommy! Zara's small voice called out, trembling as she dropped her toy. She watched with wide, fearful eyes, frozen as her mother held back tears. UCHE's anger flared even more. Sochi, you have got nothing better to do than embarrass me in front of our child? He growled, grabbing Sochi by the arm and pushing her against the wall. Sochi tried to shield herself, pleading softly, Please, UCHE, not in front of Zara. She is just a child. But UCHE was relentless. Maybe she needs to understand that you don't question me. He shouted, raising his hand again. Mommy! Zara's voice rang out again, full of fear. As she reached out her tiny arms, Mommy, are you okay? The sound of Zara's trembling voice momentarily pierced Sochi's pain. She forced a brave smile and whispered, It's okay, my love. Mommy is fine. But Zara began to cry, her small body shaking with fear. UCHE scoffed, showing no remorse as he stormed off to the bedroom, leaving Sochi crumpled on the floor. Sochi pulled Zara into her arms, holding her tightly. Shh, it's okay, sweetheart. Mommy is here, she whispered, rocking her gently. Zara looked up at her mother, her little face wet with tears. Mommy, why did daddy hurt you? She asked innocently, the question piercing Sochi's heart. Sochi's eyes filled with fresh tears as she forced a gentle smile. Sometimes people make mistakes, my love, but mommy is here and I will always be here for you. That night, Sochi lay beside Zara, stroking her daughter's hair to soothe her back to sleep. She felt her heart break for her little girl. Zara was too young to understand, but she had seen the fear in her daughter's eyes. Sochi realized then that she could not let Zara grow up witnessing this violence. Sochi sat quietly, wiping her tears as she thought about her life. She had endured so much in silence, and now her only hope of change rested on seeking help from Uche's family. Maybe if his parents understood what she was going through, they would talk some sense into him. With a heavy heart, Sochi went to visit them. Sitting across Uche's parents in their living room, she gathered her courage and spoke up. "Mama, Papa," she began, her voice shaking slightly, "I need your help. Uche, he's not treating me right. He comes home late, he's seeing other women, and he's hurting me." Uche's mother looked at her with a mild surprise, but her expression quickly turned dismissive. "Sochi," she said with a sigh, "Uche is a grown man. What can we do? He's always been independent." "Yes," Uche's father chimed in, adjusting his glasses. "It's best you stayed out of his personal affairs. Uche provides for you and your daughter, doesn't he?" Sochi's heart sank. "But Mama, Papa, he's hurting me. Zara is starting to see what is happening. I am scared for her and for me." His mother waved her hand dismissively. "You should be grateful, Sochi. After all, Uche trained you in university, didn't he? And he's giving you a good home. Just focus on taking care of him and your daughter." But Sochi's voice broke as she felt her desperation rise. "I just need him to treat me with respect. I can't keep living like this." "Respect?" Uche's father scoffed. "Sochi, you should be thankful. Do you know how many women wish for what you have? You came from nothing after all. Uche gave you everything you have now." Tears welled up in Sochi's eyes. She knew that her background was often used to remind her of what she was owed Uche. She had grown up as an only child in a lovely family. But that all changed one stormy night. Uche's family never really knew my past, she thought, her mind drifting back to the tragic day that changed her life forever. Her parents had been wealthy, and Sochi had a beautiful, happy childhood. She remembered the rainy afternoon when they went on a family outing. The road was sleepy, and the car lost control. In a single moment, everything changed. Her parents died instantly in that fatal accident, leaving Sochi all alone. She was just a little girl, and without any extended family. She was taken to an orphanage. From that day forward, Sochi grew up without any family to protect her. She returned to the present, glancing at Uche's parents with a glimmer of hope that they might understand. "Please, I have no one else to run to. I don't have family. I lost my parents when I was young. All I want is a happy and peaceful home for my daughter." But Uche's mother only shook her head, clearly unmoved. "Sochi, you chose this life, a man's personal matters and his business. You need to be grateful for what he provides and stop looking for reasons to complain. It's not easy to marry into a family that lifted you from poverty." Sochi's last bit of hope faded. She felt utterly alone, with no one to stand by her side. The weight of her past, her lonely years at the orphanage, and her struggles to survive all seemed to settle heavily on her heart. "Thank you for listening," she whispered, her voice hollow. She stood up, feeling emptier than ever. As she walked back to her home, she thought about Zara and the life she wanted for her daughter, though she had no family to fight for her. Sochi knew she would have to be strong for Zara's sake. No one else would fight for them. It was up to her to find a way to protect herself and her daughter. On her way home from visiting Uche's parents, Sochi stopped by Zara's school to pick her up. She had arranged for extra care so Zara could stay a little longer, allowing Sochi to focus on her job. Her work as an accountant demanded much of her time, but Sochi made every effort to balance her responsibilities, always doing her best to be a good mother. After a long, exhausting day, she and Zara finally arrived home. But as they entered the house, Sochi's heart sank at the sight that greeted her. Her breath caught in her throat as she saw a pair of unfamiliar shoes in the hallway leading to her bedroom. Trying to keep her composure, she gently told Zara, "My love, go to your room and play with your toys, okay? Mommy will come get you soon." Zara looked up, confused but obediently nodded, toddling off to her room. With her heart pounding, Sochi walked down the hallway toward her bedroom, praying her worst fears wouldn't be confirmed. But when she opened the door, her whole world seemed to collapse. There, on the bed, her own matrimonial bed, Uche lay with another woman, both wrapped up together without any shame. Sochi felt a wave of humiliation and pain wash over her, her hands trembling as she stood frozen in shock. Uche looked up, an annoyed sigh escaping his lips. "Oh, you are back already?" he muttered, sounding as if she was the intruder. "Can't you see I'm busy?" He sneered, gesturing dismissively. "I told you I need privacy in my house. Why don't you give us a minute?" Sochi's face flushed with humiliation and anger, but she forced herself to speak calmly. Despite the tremor in her voice, she looked at the woman on the bed and said, "Please, can you dress up and leave? This is my house and my bedroom." Before the woman could respond, Uche stood up, his face twisted with fury. "Who do you think you are to give orders in my house?" he hissed, stepping towards Sochi. In a swift motion, he raised his hand and slapped her hard across the face. Sochi stumbled backward, clutching her cheek in pain and shock. Even the woman on the bed looked startled, her gaze darting between Sochi and Uche. But Uche paid her no attention. Instead, he grabbed Sochi by the shoulders, shoving her out of the bedroom. Sochi staggered down the hallway, trying to keep her balance as Uche slammed the door behind her, shutting her out of her own room. Tears streamed down Sochi's face as she collapsed onto the couch in the living room. The sting of the slap was nothing compared to the ache in her heart. She buried her face in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably as memories of their once happy moments flashed in her mind. Now, tarnished by the betrayal she had just witnessed, her thought shifted to Zara, who was alone in her room, innocent and unaware of the chaos around her. Sochi knew she had to be strong for her daughter, but in that moment, she felt utterly broken, with her heart shattered and her dignity crushed. As her tears continued to fall, Sochi made a silent promise to herself. She didn't know how, but she would find a way out. For Zara's sake, she couldn't allow her daughter to grow up in a home filled with pain and disrespect. After Uche escorted his mistress out of the house, he walked back in with an air of indifference, as if nothing happened. He headed towards the kitchen, where he found Sochi preparing dinner. She kept her gaze down, trying to control the pain and anger brewing inside her. Uche sneered as he looked at her. "Listen, Sochi," he said coldly. "Don't you ever question me or disobey me in front of anyone again. If you pull that stunt again, I will deal with you. Is dinner ready? I am very hungry." Sochi's heart pounded as she tried to process his words. She had never felt so disrespected and disregarded. Gathering her courage, she turned to him, her voice trembling but determined. "What am I to you, Uche?" she asked, her eyes filled with hurt. "Who am I to you? Why are you treating me like this? Have I wronged you in any way?" Uche rolled his eyes, clearly annoyed, but Sochi continued. "I do everything I can to support this family," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "I work hard. I take care of Zara. I take care of you. When you married me, you promised to love and protect me. But since the birth of our daughter, you have changed. What did I do wrong, Uche? Tell me, and I will gladly apologize. I will change if that's what you want." Uche looked at her with irritation, his expression hardening. "I don't know what you are driving at, woman," he snapped. "I have always been a good husband to you. What else do you want from me?" Sochi stared at him, her eyes wide with disbelief. "A good husband?" She echoed softly. "Uche, you don't even see the pain you are causing." But Uche only shrugged. "I trained you in the university, didn't I? You came from nothing, and I gave you a better life. Isn't that enough for you to show me gratitude every day?" Sochi felt a wave of anger rise within her, but she kept her voice calm. "Is that how you see me, Uche? Just as someone you did a favor?" Uche raised his hand, silencing her. "I'm done with your whining. I don't have time for this nonsense. Serve my food, Sochi, now." With her heart heavy and her hands trembling, Sochi turned back to the gas, blinking back tears as she plated the food. She felt trapped, humiliated, and alone. But as she set the food down in front of him, something deep within her shifted. She knew that she couldn't live this way, not for herself and not for Zara. In the silence of that evening, she began to realize that something had changed, even if it meant facing a difficult path ahead. She couldn't rely on UCHE to change, and his family had already made it clear they wouldn't help. For Zara's sake, she would need to find her own strength to create a life free from this circle of pain and betrayal. Sochi had reached her breaking point. The emotional and physical torment she had endured for so long had worn her down, but now she was done. She had made up her mind to leave UCHE for good. She had already rented a small apartment, one far enough away where she could live peacefully with her daughter, Zara. It wasn't much, but it was a place of safety, a place where she could rebuild her life without fear. That morning, before UCHE returned home from his business dealings, Sochi packed up everything she and Zara would need. She made sure to gather all of their belongings, clothes, documents, and anything else that was important. She even packed a small bag for Zara, her little girl who still didn't fully understand the weight of what was happening. But Sochi knew that this was the only way to protect her from the abuse that had been their life for too long. The clock was ticking as Sochi drove to the house. She needed to be quick to get out before UCHE returned. When she arrived, she noticed the gatekeeper standing outside, eyeing her with concern. He had always been a silent witness to UCHE's cruelty, but he could never intervene. He was just a gatekeeper, and UCHE's money bought loyalty. "Madam, where are you going?" he asked, a worried frown creasing his face. Sochi hesitated, not wanting to drag anyone else into her decision, but she knew he was just trying to help, and she didn't want him to feel guilty if he found out what was really happening. "I'm just taking Zara out for a picnic," Sochi lied, putting on a strained smile. The gatekeeper's eyes flickered to her parked car and then back to her face. He knew something wasn't right, but he said nothing. "Madam, if you are running away," his voice trailed off as he looked around nervously. "Please, I beg you, don't let it be true. My oga will kill me if he finds out." Sochi's heart ached for the man, knowing that he was caught in a position where he couldn't help her without risking his own livelihood. But she offered him a reassuring smile, trying to calm his fears. "I won't be gone long," she promised, even though she knew deep down she might not return. But just as she started to drive off, she saw UCHE's car pull into driveway. Her heart sank, and a feeling of dread washed over her. She hadn't planned for this. She hadn't prepared for him to come home so soon. UCHE stepped out of the car, his eyes narrowing when he saw the parked car. His anger flared immediately, his temper always quick to ignite. "Sochi," he barked, "what is going on here? Why are you trying to leave?" Sochi froze. She tried to remain calm, but her heart raced. She hadn't thought this through. UCHE had always been unpredictable. "I'm just going out with Zara," she said quietly, trying to keep her voice steady. "I will be back soon." But UCHE wasn't buying it. His eyes hardened and he stormed towards her, grabbing her arm roughly. "No," he shouted. "You are not going anywhere. You belong to me." His grip was like iron, and Sochi struggled to free herself, but it was useless. He dragged her inside, ignoring her protest. When they reached the door of their bedroom, UCHE shoved her inside. "You think you can just walk away from me?" UCHE spat, his voice dripping with venom. "You are nothing without me, Sochi. You hear me? Nothing." Before Sochi could respond, UCHE pushed her onto the bed with such force that she almost lost her balance. He was furious, his face twisted with rage. His hands shook with the effort of controlling himself, but his anger was too much to hold back. "Don't you ever try to leave me again," UCHE growled. "You are my wife and you will stay here. I will teach you a lesson. I will make you regret trying to leave me." Sochi's heart pounded in her chest as she tried to make sense of the nightmare unfolding before her. She had thought she could escape. She had planned everything so carefully, but now, standing in front of the man she once loved, she realized that UCHE would never let her go. He would never allow her to leave. UCHE grabbed his belt and started to strike her with it, each blow feeling like a sharp stab of pain. Sochi cried out, but it only fueled his anger more. He didn't stop, he didn't care. His face was filled with rage, but it was also a face of pure control. He wanted to break her. He wanted to remind her that she was nothing without him. After striking her, he tore her skirt and raped her in a very cruel manner. When UCHE finally stopped, he stood over her, breathing heavily. His eyes burned with fury, and Sochi could barely breathe, let alone move. Her body was bruised, her heart shattered. She wanted to scream, to run, but she couldn't. UCHE had made sure of that. "Next time you try to leave me," UCHE warned, his voice low and dangerous, "I will kill you. Don't forget that." Sochi lay there, tears streaming down her face, her body shaking uncontrollably. This was the man she had once loved, the man she had married, the father of her daughter, and now he was her greatest tormentor. Sochi had taken leave from her work. She could no longer face her colleagues in her current condition. Her body was sore, bruised, and battered from the last beating, and her spirit was broken. Every day felt like an uphill battle, and Sochi wasn't sure how much more she could take. She could still hear the cruel words her husband had spat on her, see the anger in his eyes, and feel the weight of his control bearing down on her. Her friend Ijeoma was a constant source of support. She would come by every day after work, bringing food, helping with chores, and taking Zara to school when Sochi couldn't muster the strength to leave the house. Ijeoma was always there, her presence a reminder that there is still someone who cared about her well-being. One afternoon, As Sochi sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, Ijeoma sat beside her. Zara was playing with her dolls in the corner of the living room, blissfully unaware of the tension that filled the air. "Sochi," Ijeoma said gently, "this is getting serious. You can't keep living like this. You need to report UCHE to the authorities, to the human rights groups. If you don't, one day he might kill you. I can see how he's bringing you down. You don't deserve this." Sochi flinched at the harsh truth in her friend's words. She had known it was bad, but hearing it out loud from someone who cared for her made the situation feel even more real. But deep down, Sochi felt an overwhelming sense of fear. "Ijeoma, I can't," Sochi replied, her voice shaking. "If I do that, UCHE will take Zara away from me. He already threatened me before. He said that if I ever left him or reported him, he would make sure I never saw Zara again. I can't risk losing her. She is all I have left." Ijeoma sighed, rubbing her temple in frustration. "Sochi, you can't keep living in fear. You are scared of UCHE, and I understand that. But what happens if something worse happens to you? What if he takes it too far and you don't survive it to see another day? What will Zara have then? Don't you see? This isn't just about you anymore. It's about your safety and about protecting Zara. You are not just keeping her safe from UCHE. You are also protecting her from growing up thinking this is how women are treated." Sochi's eyes welled up with tears, her heart heavy with weight of Ijeoma's words. The thought of losing Zara was unbearable, but so was the constant abuse. She didn't know how longer she could keep living in this nightmare. "I can't lose her," Sochi whispered, her voice breaking. Ijeoma reached out for her hand, her grip firm and supportive. "Sochi, I know it's hard, but if you don't take action now, it might be too late. UCHE is unpredictable. He will only get worse, and Zara will grow up thinking it's normal to be treated this way. You owe it to her and to yourself to take control of your life again." Sochi sat in silence, the weight of the decision pressing heavily on her chest. She knew Ijeoma was right, but the fear of what might happen if she confronted UCHE was paralyzing. How could she protect Zara from the man who was supposed to love and care for them both? But she looked over at her daughter, playing innocently in the corner. Sochi felt a small flicker of courage rise within her. Zara deserved better. Sochi deserved better. "I will think about it, Ijeoma," Sochi said softly. "I will talk to a lawyer. I can't keep living like this." Ijeoma nodded, relieved to see Sochi even considering it. "That is a good first step, Sochi. We will figure this out together. You don't have to face this alone." Later that evening, after Zara had gone to bed, Sochi sat by the window, staring into the night. She knew this wasn't just about escaping UCHE's physical abuse. It was about breaking free from the circle of fear, control, and humiliation. It was about finding a way to protect Zara from the same pain she had endured. And it was about reclaiming her own life, no matter how difficult the journey might be. For the first time in a long while, Sochi felt a glimmer of hope. She didn't know what the future held, but one thing was clear. She couldn't let fear dictate her life any longer. She had to take action, not just for herself, but for Zara too. She wiped away her tears, took a deep breath, and made a silent promise to herself. She would fight for their safety, for their happiness, and for their future. It wouldn't be easy, but Sochi was finally ready to take that first step toward freedom. One busy morning, Sochi was rushing to work in Lagos Island. The island is always crowded with traffic, and she knew she would be late if she didn't hurry. As she was speeding down the road, she felt a sudden jolt. A car had hit her from the back, shattering her car lights. She quickly stepped out of the car, feeling her heart race. The man who hit her came out of his car to apologize. His driver also stepped out, both looking worried. "I am so sorry," the man said. "It's my fault. I told my driver to move fast because I was late for a meeting." The back of Sochi's car was badly damaged, but she could see that the man was genuinely sorry. She wasn't angry, but the shock and stress made her face jumpy. "What will I do now?" Sochi said, feeling overwhelmed. "I am already late for work." The man looked at her, then at the damage to her car. "Let me give you a lift," he suggested. "My driver can take your car to the mechanic, and I will pay for the repairs." Sochi hesitated at the first, but then agreed. She didn't have many options and was already running out of time. After a bit of persuasion, she entered the man's car. The man instructed his driver to take Sochi's car to the mechanic, while he would drive himself to work. As they drove, Sochi sat in the front seat of the Bentley, still not fully realizing how fancy the car was. She was focused on checking her watch and hoping she wouldn't be too late. The man introduced himself. "I am Onyeka," he said with a smile. Sochi didn't pay much attention. She was too busy looking at the time and thinking about her work. "I'm Sochi," she replied briefly. Onyeka smiled at her. "Don't worry, we will get there soon," he said. "Where do you work?" "I am an accountant," Sochi said, still distracted. "That's great," Onyeka said. "I am an electrical engineer." He lied. Onyeka was actually a very successful business mogul, one of the biggest company owner in the Lagos Island, but he didn't want to show off. Sochi didn't notice the way Onyeka was admiring her or how well dressed and handsome he looked. She was too focused on being on time for work. She didn't even notice the expensive car or how Onyeka kept glancing at her. He was impressed by her beauty, but Sochi was unaware of his attention. As they drove through the busy streets of Lagos Island, Sochi was too preoccupied with her worries to notice the attention she was getting from Onyeka. She just hoped she would get to her office soon and not to be too late. When Onyeka stopped in front of Sochi's farm, he turned to her and asked for her number. "So I can call you once the car is ready," he said with a smile. Sochi, still feeling rushed, quickly gave him her number. As she was about to hurry inside, Onyeka apologized again for the accident. "I am really sorry for the trouble," he said sincerely. "It's okay," Sochi replied, trying to get back to work. Later in the day, as work was about to close, Sochi's phone rang. It was Onyeka. "Hi, Sochi. Just wanted to let you know that my driver is bringing your car over," he said. Sochi was surprised. "So soon?" she asked, a bit taken aback. "Yes," Onyeka replied. "The car is all set. I will see you soon." A few minutes later, Sochi received another call. It was the driver. "Hello ma, I'm in the parking lot with your car," the driver said. Sochi quickly rushed down to the parking lot. She was in total shock. The transformation was entirely awesome. Not only had the light and the damaged bumper be fixed, but the entire car had been repainted. It looked brand new. The makeover was so impressive that she almost didn't recognize it. She immediately called Onyeka, still stunned. "Why do you go this far?" she asked, her voice filled with disbelief. "Why give my car a total makeover?" Onyeka's voice came through the phone, calm and warm. "It's from my heart, Sochi. I just felt really bad about the accident and making you late. It's the least I can do to make it up to you." Sochi shook her head, still in shock. "It's too much," she replied, feeling overwhelmed. "Thank you. Thank you so much. This is more than I expected." She paused for a moment before cutting the phone, still standing next to her newly transformed car. When she got into the car, she was even more surprised. The air conditioner, which had been broke before, was working perfectly. And to top it off, the fuel tank was full, something she hadn't expected at all. She had been planning to stop by and purchase a fuel on her way going home. But now, her car was ready to go. She couldn't believe her eyes. The cost of repairing and repainting the car, along with fixing everything else, must have been a lot of money for Onyeka. She thought to herself, could this accident be a blessing in disguise? Her mind was racing. She never would imagined that something so small, like an accident, would turn into something so big. With her car looking like it had been just bought brand new, she sat in the car for a moment, amazed, before starting the engine and heading home. Sochi stopped by Zara's school to pick her up. When her 4-year-old daughter saw the car, she couldn't believe her eyes. "Yay! My mommy bought a new car!" she shouted, running to her friends. Her classmates cheered for her, excited by her joy. As they got into the car, Zara hugged her mother and said, "Mommy, you have a new car. Who bought it for you? Because Daddy cannot buy it for you." Sochi smiled gently, though her heart sank at her daughter's waist. "I didn't buy a new car, sweetheart. I just had it repainted," she said, trying to brush off the comment. "And don't worry, Daddy can buy a car for me, you know." But Zara shook her head. "No, he cannot. He only beats you and treats you bad. I hate my daddy." Sochi's heart ached, hearing her daughter say this. She quickly reached over and gently took Zara's hand. "No, my darling, don't hate your daddy. People can change, you know. Daddy loves us. But sometimes he's not just having a good time," she said. Though she didn't believe her own words. She lied. to soothe Zara's troubled heart. On their way home, they stopped and bought ice cream to lift Zara's spirits a little. She was excited, enjoying the treat as they drove home together. Once they arrived home, Sochi didn't rest. She immediately started preparing dinner, not even bothering to take off her work clothes. She wanted to make sure the food was ready before her husband comes home. As soon as Uche walked in, he rushed over to her. "Where did you get the money to waste on repainting the car?" he asked angrily. Seeing the new look of the car, he didn't understand why she had spent so much, though he had 3 cars of his own, all well maintained. Sochi quickly replied, "I had an accident with the car, and my company helped me. They paid to repair and repaint it." She tried to keep her voice calm, not wanting to give him any reason to get angrier. Uche didn't ask how she was doing or if she had hurt herself in the accident. He simply stared at her with anger in his eyes and said, "Well, set my dinner then." He looked over at Zara, who was standing nearby. "Zara, how are you?" he asked without much emotion. Zara nodded quietly but didn't say anything. She just stood there, watching her father shout at her mother. It made her heart feel heavy, and she felt very sad for her mommy. Later, after Uche had gone to his bed, Zara quietly walked over to her mother. "Mommy," she asked softly, "are you okay? Did you get hurt in the car accident?" Sochi was surprised that her daughter had overheard their conversation. She hugged her tightly and smiled, trying to hide her pain. "My princess, I am very fine, as you can see. Thanks for caring so much," she said, kissing Zara on the forehead. Zara smiled up at her, relieved, and for a moment, everything felt a little better. But Sochi couldn't shake the feeling of the heavy weight pressing down on her heart. Later that night, Sochi's phone rang. It was Onyeka. He called to check on her after the accident. "Sochi, are you feeling any pain from the accident?" Onyeka asked, his voice full of concern. Sochi smiled and reassured him. "I am okay, thanks to the seat belt," she replied. Onyeka apologized again for the accident and for causing her to be late for work. "All right, I just called to check on you. Good night, Sochi," he said before hanging up. Sochi sat down and thought about the conversation. She dialed the number of a lawyer she knew, Barrister Obi. She had already told him everything her husband had been doing to her. He had advised her to always take pictures of her injuries and any sign of abuse as evidence. He also told her to come to his office the next day. Sochi thanked him for his advice and ended the call. Just as she hung up, Uche came out and saw her on the phone. "Who are you speaking with?" he asked, his tone sharp. Sochi quickly answered, "I was speaking with my friend, Ijeoma." Uche didn't say anything else, but Sochi could feel his eyes on her as she stood up. She couldn't help but feel uneasy around him, but she pushed the feeling aside. Meanwhile, Onyeka didn't stop thinking about Sochi. Her beauty, her calm demeanor, and the way she spoke with her sparkling eyes kept appearing in his mind. He couldn't explain it. He had met many women in his life, some even more prettier than Sochi, but none had captured his attention like she had. As he lay in his bed, he kept thinking about her. He whispered to himself, "I have seen so many beautiful women, but none have made me feel this way." He turned over, trying to clear his mind, but Sochi's image stayed with him until he finally drifted off to sleep. The following day, after work, Sochi decided to visit Barrister Obi. Her friend Ijeoma insisted on going with her, worried that Sochi might change her mind about taking action. When Ijeoma saw Sochi's car, she was shocked. "Sochi, this is too much," Ijeoma exclaimed. "I can't believe this. You told me everything over the phone, but seeing this car with my own eyes is just wow. Are you sure this man is not crushing on you? I mean, how can he go such an extent just because his driver hit you from behind? This is too much." Sochi smiled and shook her head. How can he possibly have a crush on a married woman with a daughter? She joked. "I'm even getting old," she added, trying to laugh it off. Ijeoma laughed as well. "Come on, Sochi. Who wouldn't crush on you? You are just 27 years. Even I, your friend, crush on you at times. And I'm a woman, not to mention a man who has blood running through his veins." She grinned. "That's why I can't understand why your husband, UCHE, treats you the way he does. He is blind to your worth." Sochi smiled weakly, grateful for Ijeoma's support, though her heart ached at the thought of Uche's treatment. When they arrived at Barrister Obi's office, the lawyer welcomed them inside. Sochi began to tell him everything about her husband's abuse, the physical marks left on her, and the times he had violated her trust and treated her badly. Barrister Obi listened in shock, unable to believe that someone like Sochi, so beautiful and humble, could be treated this way. "I can't believe it," he said. "A man like that is not worthy of you. But don't worry, we will take the necessary steps. You don't deserve this, Sochi." He explained to her what she needed to do next, the legal steps she could take to protect herself. They thanked him for his help and left his office, feeling a little lighter, but still bothered by the weight of their situation. Unbeknownst to Sochi and Ijeoma, a young man in his early 30s had been sitting in the waiting area of the office, overhearing their conversation. He was deeply moved by what he heard. So this woman goes through all this brutality and no one knows. He thought to himself. His heart went out to her. Onyeka, who came to visit his uncle, Barrister Obi, overheard everything they discussed in the office earlier. When Barrister Obi found out that Onyeka heard their discussion, "This is a very confidential matter," the barrister said seriously. "No one must hear about this from you, Onyi. If they do, I will be violating my client's rights and the privilege, which could send me to prison." Onyeka promised his uncle that he would keep everything confidential, but his mind was racing with thoughts of Sochi. He couldn't shake the image of her earlier, her beauty, and the kindness in her eyes. He had to tell his uncle how he met her. "I met her when her car was hit by my driver," Onyeka explained. I offered to help her out, and she's been on my mind ever since. Barrister Obi raised an eyebrow and told him that Sochi is a married woman with a daughter, that he should remove his mind from her. But Onyeka couldn't stop thinking about Sochi. She had left an impression on him that he couldn't ignore. When Onyeka got home that evening, he couldn't stop thinking about Sochi. He asked himself why he felt this urge to check on her. Maybe it was the conversation he had overheard in his uncle's office, or maybe he just genuinely cared. Before he knew it, he found himself dialing her number. Hello, Sochi's soft voice answered, and something about it seemed to melt his heart. Sochi, Onyeka said, clearing his throat. How are you doing? I just wanted to check on you again. Make sure you are really okay. Sochi paused, a bit surprised that Onyeka was still calling, especially after she had reassured him that she was fine. I am okay, she replied. You don't need to keep checking on me, Onyeka. I appreciate everything you have done, but really, I am fine. Onyeka felt a bit embarrassed. It was true. He didn't have any agenda to calling her again. He had just felt the need to make sure she was alright. Perhaps worrying that her husband might have hurt her again. But he brushed it off, telling himself he was only checking up out of concern. Well, alright then, good night, Sochi, he said, and ended the call. Onyeka promised himself that he wouldn't call her again. After all, she was a married woman, and he had no place interfering in her life, no matter how much he felt for her. Sochi, on the other hand, was left wondering why Onyeka kept reaching out to her. She shook her head, reminding herself that she had enough to worry about without adding unnecessary thoughts. That night, UCHE watched her closely, keeping a suspicious eyes on her every movement. Unbeknownst to Sochi, he had secretly installed a tracking app on her phone that allowed him to see who was calling her, whether on WhatsApp or regular calls. Ever since that day, when she had almost left with Zara, he had become more controlling, determined to ensure she never made such a move again. Who is Onyeka? He suddenly asked, his voice sharp, catching Sochi off guard. And why does he keep calling you? Sochi's heart skipped a beat. How did UCHE know about Onyeka? She quietly lied, hoping to diffuse his anger. He's just a colleague who wanted to check on me since I had a little accident with the car, she said. UCHE walked over to her, his expression darkening as he gripped her jaw tightly. You should better not cheat on me, Sochi, he hissed, because if you do, that will be the end of you. He let go of her and walked away, leaving Sochi standing there, shaking and confused. She was now more worried than ever about UCHE's behavior, knowing that he was watching every move she made. A few weeks had passed, and Onyeka had done his best to move on from Sochi. Although thought of her still lingered, he managed to focus on his work and push her out of his mind. Sochi too had shifted his attention back to work, her daughter Zara, and managing the harsh reality of her marriage. She was determined to find a way to cope with Uche's cruelty while giving Zara the best life she could. One afternoon, Sochi's accounting firm received a prestigious assignment. They were hired by one of the largest firms in the city to investigate a suspected case of embezzlement. The company had discovered a significant loss of funds over the past 2 years and needed the expertise of an external team. Suspecting that someone within their ranks was siphoning off money, Sochi's firm was renowned for its integrity and skill in forensic accounting, and her boss had chosen her, along with 2 other colleagues, to lead the investigation. When they arrived at the client's towering headquarters, they couldn't help but be impressed by the size and the sophistication of the business. The building was sleek and modern, with glass walls and high ceilings that spoke of the company's wealth. As they entered the conference room, one of the firm's executives, Mr. Olumide, greeted them warmly. "Thank you all for coming on short notice," he said, gesturing for them to take seats. "Our chairman and the entire board had placed a lot of trust in your firm's ability to uncover what is happening here. We have had millions disappeared over the last 2 years, and our internal team had been unable to pinpoint how or why." "We understand," Sochi replied professionally. "We will do everything in our power to get to the bottom of this. Our team is experienced with this type of investigations." Mr. Olumide nodded. "Good. We have compiled everything we have for you, both hard copies of our ledgers and digital records. You are welcome to work in our office space, or you can take the files back with you to your farm." One of Sochi's colleagues, Emeka, leaned in and asked, "Can we have access to the employees' financial records as well?" "Yes," Mr. Olumide answered. "We have already informed the team here about your investigation, and we are committed to full transparency. Anything you need, we will provide." Sochi studied the ledgers carefully, already beginning to identify unusual patterns and trends. "I will need access to payroll and employees' expense reports as well," she said. "Of course," replied Mr. Olumide. "We trust your expertise, Sochi. Your reputation precedes you." As they settled in to begin their work, Sochi felt a similar spark of excitement. This was her domain, uncovering hidden details, following the money, and solving puzzles that seemed invisible to anyone else. She and her colleagues spent hours poring over the data, comparing figures and making notes. "Impressive place, isn't it?" her colleague Emeka said, looking around as they took a short break. "Yes, and the stakes are high," Sochi replied, a hint of determination in her voice. "But we will find out what is happening here. Leave it to the brainy Sochi to spot every detail," Emeka joked, nudging her playfully. "You are practically a human calculator." Sochi laughed, feeling the warmth of the friendly gist. It was moments like these that reminded her how much she loved her work. This investigation would be challenging, but she was more than ready. That afternoon, Sochi and her colleagues decided to take some of the company's ledgers back to their office to continue the work. They agreed to return the next day to review more documents. Meanwhile, Onyeka, the chairman of the company Sochi was auditing, had just finished a meeting. Onyeka was a self-made man, despite coming from a wealthy family. At 31, he had built one of the top engineering firms in the country, with multiple branches and thousands of employees. Though he visited the head office occasionally, his focus was often on expanding his business further. As Onyeka prepared to leave the office, his driver was waiting for him in the garage. While walking towards the car, he noticed a group of people heading toward another vehicle. It was Sochi and her colleagues. They were smiling and chatting as they prepared to leave. Onyeka paused, watching them from a distance. He turned to one of the executives working with him and asked, "Are they the auditors you brought in for the missing funds?" "Yes, sir," the executive replied. "That's their team, led by Sochi. She is really good at her job from what I have seen." Onyeka nodded, his gaze lingering on Sochi. Her calm demeanor and the way she carried herself stood out to him, even from afar. Her smile seemed to light up her face. He watched as they got into their car and drove away, disappearing from view. That evening, Onyeka found himself restless. He couldn't focus on anything. Memories of the day he met Sochi rushed back. Her voice, her soft smile, and her strength. He thought he had moved on after their brief encounter, but seeing her today reignited something in him. Why her? Onyeka muttered to himself. Why do I keep thinking about her? Could this be fate or just coincidence? Later, he called the same executive. When are the auditors coming back? He asked, trying to sound casual. They will be back tomorrow, sir, the executive replied. They are making excellent progress, especially Sochi. She is very thorough. Good, Onyeka said. Keep me updated on their findings. As he hung up, Onyeka leaned back in his chair, deep in thought. He told himself he only wanted to ensure the audit was going well, but deep down, he knew it was more than that. Seeing Sochi again had stirred feelings he couldn't explain, and now he couldn't stop thinking about her. The next day, Onyeka came to the office early. He had a trip later, but he wanted to see Sochi at work. From his office, he turned on the CCTV camera to watch the audit team. Sochi and her colleagues arrived and started working. They were focused and quiet, going through files and documents. Sochi, as usual, stayed calm and serious. She whispered something to one of her colleagues, and they both nodded. After a while, Sochi sent one of the executives. When he arrived, he gave him a file and explained her findings. We have found the problem, Sochi said. The missing money came from this department. The records show some suspicious activities. With this, you can catch the people responsible. The executive looked at the file and was impressed. This is excellent work, Mrs. Sochi. Thank you for making this clear. I will take it to the board right away. As the executive left, Onyeka, watching through the CCTV, smiled proudly. He whispered, "That's my girl." Just then, his secretary entered the office to drop some files. She heard Onyeka's words and thought he was talking to her. "Sir?" she asked, looking confused. Onyeka quickly looked away from the monitor. "Oh, no, I wasn't talking to you," he said, trying to act normal. The secretary glanced at the screen and saw the camera feed. She realized he was watching someone but didn't say anything. She smiled quietly, dropped the files, and left the office. Onyeka leaned back in his chair, still thinking about Sochi. He admired how smart and calm she was. How does she stay so strong, even when she's going through a lot, in her husband's hand? He wondered and sighed, knowing she was on his mind more than she should be. Meanwhile, Sochi continued working. She and her team prepared more reports before leaving the farm. As they drove back to their office, her colleague Nkechi said, "Sochi, you are so good at this job. Did you see how impressed the executive was? They might call you for more jobs like this in the future." Sochi smiled and shook her head. "It's not just me. We all work together to figure it out," she replied. "But the way you explained everything was amazing." Nkechi added, "Even the chairman must applaud you." Sochi laughed softly. "I don't think the chairman even knows I exist. Let's just focus on finishing this project." Back in his office, Onyeka was still thinking about Sochi as he packed for his trip. When his driver arrived, he told himself to stop thinking about her, but deep inside, he knew it wouldn't be easy. Sochi had left a strong impression on him, one he couldn't ignore. That evening, Sochi returned home feeling exhausted. After cooking, she bathed Zara, fed her, and settled her on the sofa while they watched cartoons. Before long, Sochi fell asleep, cradling her daughter in her arms. UCHE came home and found them there. He frowned, taking Zara from Sochi's arm and carrying her to her bed. Returning to the living room, he tapped Sochi roughly on the shoulder. "Sochi, wake up!" She jolted awake. "Why are you sleeping here? What if I came home with someone and found you lying on the sofa like this? It's embarrassing. Don't let me see this again." "I am sorry," Sochi said quickly, standing up and rubbing her eyes. "Go and get my food," UCHE ordered sharply. Sochi hurried to the kitchen. As she was dishing his food, her phone rang. She glanced at the screen. It was Onyeka. Hesitating for a moment, she answered, holding the phone between her ear and her shoulder. "Hello," she said softly. UCHE walked in just as she spoke. He saw her on the phone and his face darkened. Without warning, he slapped her hard across the face. The phone fell to the floor. "How dare you answer a call while getting my food?" he yelled. "And who are you talking with? Can't you tell the person that you are serving your husband's dinner?" "Sochi, I own you. I come first before anyone, and you should treat me with the maximum respect I deserve as your husband." Sochi held her cheek, stunned. "I am sorry. I didn't mean any harm," she said shakingly. "I would have ended the call if you asked." Before she could finish, UCHE slapped her again, harder this time. "You are talking back at me now," he roared, grabbing her arm and shaking her violently. From the phone lying on the floor, Onyeka heard everything. His heart pounded with anger and worry as he listened. Immediately, he put the call on record. "Uche, please stop," Sochi begged, tears streaming down her face. Just then, Zara ran into the kitchen, crying, "Daddy, leave my mommy alone," she screamed, clinging to his leg. Uche, still in a rage, pushed Zara aside. She stumbled and fell, hitting her head on the tiled floor. Blood began to pump from the cut on her forehead. Sochi screamed, "Zara! Oh my God!" She rushed to her daughter, shaking with panic. Zara whimpered softly, her small face pale. Sochi lifted her in her arms, her tears falling onto Zara's cheek. "No, no, no! Please stay with me, my baby." Uche froze, his anger replaced by shock. "Zara," he muttered, stepping back. Sochi didn't wait. She ran to the car, shouting at the gateman to open the gate. "Hurry!" The gateman, seeing the blood, quickly opened the gate. "Madam, what happened?" "Chai, small madam oh," he cried. Sochi drove straight to the hospital, her hands shaking on the steering wheel. When she arrived, she screamed for help. The doctor rushed Zara into the emergency room. After what felt like eternity, a doctor came out. "She is stable," he said. "It's just a mild concussion. Thankfully, the injury isn't as bad as it looked." Sochi fell to her knees, sobbing in relief. "Thank you, God. Thank you so much." The doctor turned to her. "What happened?" he asked gently. Before Sochi could answer, Uche, who had just arrived, stepped forward. She fell while playing. He lied quickly. The doctor frowned but nodded. Sochi glanced at Uche, her heart heavy with anger and sadness. She said nothing, instead choosing to stay by Zara's side, holding her hand and silently praying for strength. Onyeka sat in his couch, stunned by what he had just heard over the phone. He replayed the event in his mind. The sound of Uche's shouting, the slap, and Zara's cry still echoing in his ears. How did a simple call from him lead to this? He clenched his feet, guilt washing over him. "If I hadn't called, this wouldn't have happened," he whispered to himself. The thought of Zara, hurt because of his actions, made his heart ache. He blamed himself for bringing more pain into Sochi's life and endangering her daughter. But deep down, Onyeka knew the real issue wasn't his call. It was Uche. The man was a monster, and Sochi didn't deserve to live in fear every day. He couldn't stand by any longer, pretending he didn't care. "I must help her," he decided. His voice firm. "I can't watch her suffer like this. She needs to leave that man." Onyeka resolved to step in, no matter the risk. Sochi and Zara's safety mattered more than anything else now. At the hospital, Sochi sat quietly beside Zara's bed, holding her tiny hand. Tears streamed down her face as she prayed silently. "God, please keep my daughter safe. Please, don't let anything happen to her," she murmured. Uche sat on the chair nearby, his arm crossed, glaring at Sochi. His anger hadn't subsided. "This is all your fault," he sneered. "Always on the phone with that Onyeka. Look at what you have caused. Because of you, I hurt my own daughter." Sochi didn't respond. She kept her eyes on Zara, refusing to engage with him. She was too tired, too broken to argue. Uche leaned closer, his voice a harsh whisper. "When we get home, you will see what I will do to you. You will pay for this." Sochi swallowed hard, her hands trembling slightly, but she stayed silent. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her fear. Onyeka couldn't get the incident out of his mind. He picked up his phone and dialed a private investigator he trusted. "I need you to gather every details about a man named Uche," he said, his tone sharp. "I need evidence of his abuse, everything he has done to his wife and child." The investigator agreed, and Onyeka ended the call. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. "I will not let her suffer anymore," he vowed, "not while I'm alive." Later that evening, the doctor came to check on Zara. "She's doing better," he said to Sochi with a kind smile. "She just needs rest. You are lucky it wasn't worse." "Thank you," Sochi said softly, her voice cracking. She stroked Zara's hair gently, relieved that her baby was okay. Uche, standing by the door, muttered under his breath, "Lucky? She wouldn't need luck if her mother wasn't so careless." Sochi's heart sank, but she stayed focused on her daughter. She was determined to protect Zara, even if it meant enduring Uche's cruelty for a little while longer. But deep in her heart, a spark of hope flickered. Maybe, just maybe, someone would come to save them. The next day, Zara was still in the hospital, resting and recovering well. Sochi stayed by her side, thankful. It was the weekend, so she didn't have to worry about work. Before Uche left for home that morning, he pulled Sochi aside. His tone was cold and threatening. "Don't you dare tell anyone what happened. Do you hear me? If you open your mouth, you will regret it," he warned. Sochi nodded silently, not wanting to provoke him further. Later that afternoon, Sochi called her best friend, Ijoma. Her voice trembled with tears as she spoke, unable to hold back her pain. Ijoma rushed to the hospital immediately. When she arrived, she embraced Sochi tightly, seeing the distress in her friend's eyes. "Sochi, what is going on? Tell me everything," Ijoma demanded. Between sobs, Sochi explained what happened, from Uche's outburst to Zara's injury. Ijoma's face turned red with anger. "That man is a monster," she exclaimed. "He needs to be caged. How long will you keep enduring this?" Sochi shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know what to do," she whispered. As they spoke, Zara stared on the hospital bed and opened her eyes. "Mommy, stop crying," she said weakly. Her small voice filled the room. "From now on, I will protect you from my daddy." Sochi and Ijoma were stunned. They exchanged glances, shocked by the innocent yet powerful words of the little girl. Ijoma sat by Zara's bed and gently stroked her hair. "You are so brave, Zara," she said softly. Later, the doctor came in to check on Zara. He smiled kindly at Sochi. "Good news," he said. "Zara's scan looked fine. There is no serious damage on her brain, just a mild concussion. She can go home tomorrow, but she needs plenty of rest and no rough play for a while." Before Sochi could respond, Zara suddenly blurted out, "My daddy pushed me." The doctor froze, his smile fading. He looked at Sochi, her eyes wide opened and panicked. Ijeoma's jaw dropped, and she turned to Sochi, her expression demanding answers. Uche walked into the room just then. His face darkened when he heard Zara's words. He quickly stepped to her bedside and put on a forced smile. "Sweetheart, you must be careful when playing next time, okay?" he said, brushing her hair as if nothing had happened. The doctor observed the scene closely. His eyes shifted to Sochi, noticing her swollen cheek, something he had already noted when she first brought Zara to the hospital. He suspected abuse, but knew there was little he could do if Sochi didn't speak up. The next day, Zara was discharged from the hospital. She seemed cheerful, as if nothing had happened. But Sochi knew better. On their way home, Zara suddenly said, "Mommy, I don't want to go back. I'm scared of Daddy." Sochi's heart broke at her words. Holding Zara's little hand tightly, she reassured her, "You don't have to be scared, my love. I will make sure nothing bad happens again." Meanwhile, Onyeka was determined to help Sochi. He met with his uncle, Barrister Obi, and handed over the evidence he had, including the recording of Uche's abuse. Barrister Obi was shocked. "This is serious, Onyeka. This man is dangerous. But tell me, are you sure about this? Are you helping her out of caring, or is it a pity?" Onyeka's voice was steady. "Uncle, it's not pity. I truly care about her and Zara. I can't stand by and watch them suffer." Barrister Obi nodded but cautioned, "You must tread carefully. Sochi is married with a kid. Your father will not like it. And if you are serious about her, you need to be ready for the challenges ahead." "I will do whatever it takes," Onyeka said firmly. That afternoon, Onyeka decided it was time to speak directly to Sochi. He called her during lunch, knowing she would be rushing home after work. "Sochi, please, I want us to talk," he said. Sochi hesitated but agreed, deciding to put an end to his persistent calls. When Sochi arrived at the small restaurant where Onyeka had asked her to meet him. "Good afternoon," she said politely as she sat down. "Can I get you something to eat?" Onyeka asked, but Sochi shook her head. "I didn't come here for lunch," she said. "I came to know why you keep calling me. What do you want?" Onyeka smiled deeply. "Sochi, since I met you, I have been unable to stop thinking about you. I have a deep feelings and admiration for you. I admire your strength and I care about you a lot." Sochi frowned and held up her hand, showing him her wedding ring. "I am married, Onyeka. I have a child. Whatever you are thinking is not possible." "I know," Onyeka replied gently. "I know everything. I know about your husband's abuse. I know about the night Zara got hurt. I even know about how much you have been suffering." Sochi's eyes widened. "How do you know this?" she asked in shock. Onyeka explained everything. The night he overheard the abuse during their phone call, the recording he made, and how he shared it with his uncle, Barrister Obi. He apologized for the pain she and Zara had suffered, admitting that he had only wanted to check on her that day. "I am so sorry, Sochi," He said earnestly, "I didn't mean to cause you more pain. I just want to help you. You don't deserve to live like this. Let me help you get out of this marriage." Sochi stared at him, her mind reeling. She felt exposed and vulnerable. She said, "I can take care of my affairs by myself, but thanks for caring." As she excused herself and stood up to go, Onyeka held her hand. "I want to help you. Please, Sochi. Your husband is a monster. You and Zara need to stay away from him. I want to help you because I care for you and Zara." Onyeka leaned forward. "You can fight him for Zara's custody. I will help, Sochi. For yourself and for Zara. You both deserve peace and happiness. And I will be there to support you every step of the way." That night, Sochi couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about what Onyeka had said. Should she accept his help or not? She wasn't sure if she could trust him. She thought about it all night, torn between fear and hope. The next day, Sochi called her friend Ijeoma. She told her everything about the conversation with Onyeka. Ijeoma smiled and said, "I knew there was more to him from the moment he helped you with that car. I have always seen something between you two." Sochi smiled a little, but her heart was still heavy. "I don't know if I can do this, Ijeoma. It feels like such a big decision." Ijeoma was firm. "Sochi, Onyeka had shown he really cares for you and Zara. He wants to help. You don't have to stay in that bad marriage anymore. You deserve better." Sochi nodded, feeling her heart lighten a little. "You are right. I will call him." Later that evening, Sochi called Onyeka. She spoke softly. "Onyeka, I accept your help." Onyeka was happy. "I am glad, Sochi. Don't worry. We will fix everything. Stay calm and it will be over soon." Meanwhile, UCHE was getting suspicious. He started to wonder if something was going on between Sochi and Onyeka. He tried to find out more about him, but couldn't find anything clear. UCHE was frustrated. "This man is after my wife. Could Sochi really cheating on me?" He couldn't stop thinking about it. That evening, he came home and his gate man gave him a big envelope. He opened it and his heart dropped. Divorce papers? How dare she? UCHE muttered, his anger growing. He stormed into the house, found Sochi in the kitchen, and began yelling at her. But Sochi stayed calm. She didn't look scared. "Stop, UCHE," Sochi said quietly. "Read what is in your hands." UCHE glared at her, but opened the papers. His eyes widened when he saw the restriction. "Stay 10 feet away from Sochi. If you break this, you will face the law." Sochi spoke firmly. "I want a quiet divorce. If you want to fight, get your own lawyer and meet me in court." She didn't look at him as she continued. "Zara and I will stay with Ijeoma until everything is finished. I'm just here to pick up our things." UCHE raised his hand as if he wants to hit her, but Sochi's voice was strong. "Try it, UCHE, and you will never see Zara again. I will make sure you rot in jail." Sochi turned and walked out of the kitchen. UCHE was left standing there, shocked and speechless. As the door slammed, UCHE sat down, feeling lost. How long had Sochi been planning this? She had pretended to be weak and naive, but now he saw a woman who was done with him. He was shocked and scared. How can I fight her in court? Uche whispered to himself. She is not the same person anymore. But he assured himself that he will use all his connections and win over her. He is not aware that the man behind Sochi's fight for divorce was Onyeka, the business mogul, a powerful man with lots of connection.